Alright everyone, while some people were still asleep, a major US bank just completely collapsed after several days of double-digit losses. Yes, Silicon Valley Bank has collapsed. It is no more. It's completely insolvent. $200 billion worth of assets now hazarded. Now here's an interesting experiment. This is the largest banking collapse by far since the Great Recession period, in which Yellen and others implemented reforms to try to help to prevent contagion, preferably to prevent banks from collapsing in the first place. We'll get into why, by the way, Silicon Valley Bank collapsed. It has to do with their specific clientele list. It's not going to be pretty for a number of other tech companies, and it is tech related, but they've collapsed. That wasn't prevented. Now we see if the reforms that were instituted in the Obama era prevent contagion. They prevent further banking collapses, that it doesn't hit the rest of this entire sector of the economy, which would be a goddamn disaster at this particular moment. You've already got some real warning signs to the point where Robert Reich and others are already making preemptive propaganda to blame the Fed for the incoming recession, which would probably come with stagflation. They're already preemptively doing that, and Biden, genius that he is, it was the one thing that he did that was intelligent last year, had already set up to blame the Fed for the same thing by saying, well, my goal on tackling inflation is just to let the Fed do its job. By the way, I'm going to occasionally undermine them by publicly promoting that they're going too far, just in case. He very carefully scripted that. That's the one strategic win that the Biden administration so far has had. If there's a recession, he can point to sound clips of himself warning that the Fed was going to cause it. Then again, you have the ass covering by Robert Reich and others. It's going to be very interesting if it happens. There's still hope that we can avoid it. And of course, we're all hoping that we do. While it would upend the political spectrum in a positive way, it would cause millions of people to suffer. So I'm not a fan of making people suffer in order to get a good political outcome, like the ending of the stewardship that's currently in office. I can't bring myself to want people to lose their jobs and their homes to cause that. I'd rather it be caused by an upswelling of civic activism or something more positive and more friendly towards the average person in the population. Here's why Silicon Valley Bank collapsed. Tech has done horribly over the last couple of years. It's like when they attack Twitter by saying, well, Twitter has lost whatever amount of its stock value. Okay, now compare it to pretty much every other mainline tech firm. The holdouts are all like new tech sites and upstarts. Oh, that's right. Here's the problem. Silicon Valley Bank was the bank for most of those upstarts, like Airbnb and Uber and things like that, DoorDash and shit. It's not going to impact them at all. When they can't get their money that they had deposited there, there's a limit on the withdrawals at the moment to make sure that at least the little guy is capable of recouping the loss. I think it's up to $250,000 or something. So if you had a little bit in this bank, you probably just switch banks. You are able to withdraw your money starting soon, and then you switch it. If you had $20 million invested in the bank, or maybe $1 billion, it's entirely possible for some of these businesses that were upstarts a few years ago and now are massive corporations, you might be down shit creek without a paddle, pending massive amounts of litigation to recoup your losses. Going through all of the normal bureaucratic processes. Yes, the government has safeguarded your money. Now you've got to compel the government to give it to you. We're going to see how well those 2000 reforms actually work in living time very, very soon here. I don't know whether they'll work. I'm hoping so. It would be nice that, millions of people wouldn't end up unemployed. The bigger risk, of course, is that with the collapse of this bank, it steamrolls other tech firms. You end up getting a sort of a death spiral. The tech firms end up dispossessed. Some of them go under, while they're attempting to litigate to get their money. Other banks potentially are impacted. Other tech firms, therefore the contagion spreads and they get impacted. A tech collapse has already effectively happened, though. If you look at the stock value of tech firms, the deflation already began last year. So some of them have died as the result of this. By the way, Twitter is actually around the middle of the pack. Despite laying off most of Twitter's workforce and completely reshuffling everything about the company, Elon Musk has managed to break about even. In terms of competition with other tech sites, Twitter's nowhere near the bottom of the barrel. Congrats to him, by the way, for dealing with all the propaganda by low-info individuals who think that Twitter is uniquely doomed because of a stock loss, while pretty much everything else in the industry is losing, hemorrhaging billions of dollars in value. Link in the description archived, of course, if you'd like to review this story for yourself. I don't know whether the banking reforms will work. The ability to lock the money up and then make sure that the smaller investors are paid off first, that avoids a bunch of problems. Of course, a person that has 50, 100 grand in the bank, but not a rich person, someone who's, they've got money on hand, but they're, they invested in a restaurant or something. They cook in their own right. They have a food cart. That would be an expected amount of money for them potentially to have at that point with that kind of career. They get a small business, a couple of grocery stores, Ma and Pa on Main Street or something like that. It's great that they'll be able to recoup, so they don't go under. That protects that protects communities and consumers. That's actually a good reform. But then you've got all of those other companies that employ collectively millions and millions of people, and it's more hazarded. Again, over $200 billion with a B dollar in value has been erased from the United States with this collapse. Now, all those groups have to find other banks to work with. Of course, if you're dealing with denominations of tens of thousands of dollars on a daily basis, you need to make sure that things are set up properly. You have to shop around for the best deal that you can get, I suppose. Be interesting. Notice how you're not seeing a whole lot about this on page 1. Again, one of the top banks in the United States that services a disproportionate number of smaller tech and innovation-style firms. Millions of clients. The Silicon Valley Bank, the bank sort of for Silicon Valley, it's in its name for a reason, has collapsed completely. And I had to get a news tip from somebody else to know that this was even a thing. So it could get dicey. Thank goodness it happened right before the weekend, so they can pretend, because they don't update the news as much on weekends because people are busy doing other things. They can sort of hide the story for a couple of days and hope that things are sorted out over the next 48 hours, which I'm sure that they're hoping and praying for right now, specifically for political reasons. That's about all. Peace out.